Joining me today on People I Know show is Phalin Oliver. Hello, Phalin.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me. We've met just once before.
Yep.
It was at a different library in this part of the Twin Cities. And that was you being in the middle, maybe the early stages of a project, kind of revamping your podcast, Hueman Journey. And you were collecting kind of random people to have conversations with. That's how we met, and now I've noticed lately that your podcast is relaunched. Just tell me about, I guess, what led to us, first off, meeting for the first time. Where did this idea come from?
Okay. So initially, I was just going through a really deep funk, leaving my job. And I didn't know where I wanted things to go with life. I didn't know where I wanted my podcast to go. It didn't feel like me anymore. And I sat down with a business coach, and she said she had challenged herself to meet with 90 people in 90 days to prove to herself that she could be a business coach. And I thought that was way too ambitious for me. But I thought I could interview 30 people in the month of July. And I got to 27 because I was really exhausted. I couldn't hit the 30 mark. But it was, I ended up just reaching out to people on every platform that I could and found as many people as I could. And it was about 40 people that signed up, but I only got to do 27.
And was it mostly people you had never met before, like me, or a mix of people that you knew as well?
It was a mix. It was a mix of both. Yeah. I would say it was a mix of both. I met some new people along the way, and there were some people that I was able to kind of convince to come on the podcast because I had known them from high school, or we're still really good friends right now, that sort of thing.
I don't know how early in it, but I think I was in the early part of July, and now as September is rolling through, you've released it. I'm not sure exactly when. This episode between you and I will air on my podcast, but I noticed listening to some of the early episodes that it's really both like captivating and interesting to hear just kind of the rapid fire. Like you're in the episode, what do you call it? The name of the episode when you don't talk at all, really. It's remind me.
The nourishment episode.
Nourishment.
Yes.
So you, like the individual I listened to today, it was only her speaking. You had edited out yourself. So I'm learning so much about this person so quickly, and it's like really deep, intimate details from this individual's life. And I thought that was a really good way to do it because I'm getting to know this random person very quickly and beginning to understand what people go through.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the big possibilities with podcasts is you get to know people in ways that you just would never have before.
Yeah. That was my purpose too. I mulled over 40 questions and came down to about 20 of them. And for some reason, I have this art of getting people to open up to me. And I like to cut out a lot of the information that I feel like people are just speaking to me about. But there are a lot of gems in hearing people's stories and their journeys. And I don't know, I feel like everybody I spoke with, I related to something in some way. And it moved and changed me completely those 30 days. And so I'm excited to be able to share that with other people. And like you said, you learn so much about Emily Rose or Marissa, the 2 episodes that just came out, in 20 minutes. And those aren't normally conversations that you would go in meeting someone for the first time, but it happened. Those were the first times that I had met those 2 women.
Yeah, that was captivating to hear that. Because like when I have my conversations in long form, and I think over a longer length of time, sometimes you can get to know someone, but the way you're approaching it is, I think, something that's really worth considering for people to listen to and maybe for me or someone else to try at some point because it's a good way of going about it. The podcast in general, like we're kind of doing the same thing. I started mine in October of last year, and I think you were maybe a few months after that. So we had a similar idea, but I'm sure it came from somewhat of a different place. Why a podcast at all? Like how did podcasts play a role in your life prior to starting one?
Yeah, so I worked in pharmacy for the last 6 years. I was in pharmacy, And I had got a promotion into a position where I was just sitting in an office and I was so bored. So I would listen to podcasts. And this was the first time I had listened to podcasts. I mean, there's a podcast that I'm obsessed with, but I don't really get the chance to listen to anymore, but it's called The Friend Zone.
Okay.
And it's an all-black cast, and they just have pop culture and mental health topics, and I thought this is really cool. So I wanted to start a podcast after hearing that podcast. And I started recording initially with a co-host, and it didn't end up working out. And so then I took a long break, a long hiatus, and then decided to come back. I don't know why I decided to come back, because I was so torn up about it and confused. But I just keep hearing messages that things are bigger than you, things are bigger than you. And so that's kind of what pushed me in the mental health direction and made me feel like we need to tell these stories that are uncomfortable to talk about. You know, like what you were saying, vulnerability.
And that's something I more recently realized myself. Like, I've enjoyed the process of talking to all kinds of different people, most of whom I have known somewhat or pretty well, and then occasionally people like you that I'd come across not known that well, but still invited on and had a conversation with. But I was finding that there's something I'm missing, and the thing that at least at this moment I think I'm missing, is having some really deep conversations, the way that there's not that many people in most people's lives that you can have that with, but those are the conversations in my life, throughout my life, that I think are the most valuable. And realizing that I'm not really doing that enough on my podcast made me think that, okay, I can probably try that approach, see if I enjoy it more, see if listeners enjoy it more, and it has a bigger impact. So that's what I'm trying to do. And you mentioned mental health. As I see it right now, you release 2 episodes per week. Monday, where it's mostly or just you, some pop culture, some mental health, just a variety of topics. And then Wednesday is the nourishment, the mental health aspect. You know, what drives you to include that? Anything in particular?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with depression when I was about 9 or 10. And so I've been in therapy and I'm on medications and struggling with this diagnosis and this illness my entire life, basically. And thinking about it, I think I was misdiagnosed initially. I think there wasn't enough communication, there wasn't enough evidence to say I was depressed. I think it had a lot to do with my environment and where I was growing up. And I was always told, you have to keep it a secret. You can't tell anyone you have depression. They'll make fun of you. They'll think you're crazy. You have to keep it a secret. And so I always went around thinking that it was just me and my mom struggling with depression. And once I realized once I was able to get a hold of Google, I realized there's so many people that relate to stories that have stories that I can relate to. And I, at that moment, knew it's important for me to talk about it, because that's the only time that I felt better, was when I could relate to someone else. And I was raped at 21, and I ran into him again 4 years to the day. And I posted his picture on Facebook, because I thought initially he stalked me, but ended up finding out that wasn't the case. And when I posted his picture, I got so many messages from women saying they were raped, or they had experienced the same things that I had went through, and they were contemplating suicide. And so getting messages like that made me feel like, once again, it's bigger than me. Once again, people are struggling with things, and the moment I speak about it, the moment I let go of my ego and my pride and the shame that I thought was going to come with it, is the moment that it makes you feel fulfilled and nourished, which is why I call that segment Nourishment. And yeah, I just feel like it's important to have dialogues and talk about what's going on, in order for everybody else to feel like they're in a safe space.
So with the depression and the rape, obviously there was a point in your life, at least it sounds like, with each of them that you weren't sharing it.
Yeah.
So the tipping point of when you became okay with sharing it, or comfortable, or maybe it's never comfortable, what did that feel like to finally go over that edge? Like, how did that change you?
So how it changed me, I would say it's made me more comfortable with myself. I say I'm unapologetically me now, and I enjoy that. I also say, do you have a friend that just sometimes has vomit? Like they vomit their words, they talk too much, or they share too much. That's me with my own business. I'm
Okay.
like, keep some stuff to yourself.
So you need to learn. You think you need to learn to constrain yourself a little bit. But have you always been like that though?
No. I've not always been like this. I've been very secretive for the most part. But I just there are some things that I'm not okay with sharing. But for the most part, I feel like we all have qualities that we're insecure about. And the things that we're insecure about, everybody has, and everyone's insecure about certain things. And so why do I need to be ashamed of this, you know? I also grew up in a cult, or I called a cult, a religious cult, where I felt like I was constantly being shamed all the time, shamed about how I talked, about how I dressed, about who I was dating, decisions I made. And now that I'm free from that, I feel much better about my life and the direction that it's going in, and I don't feel like anybody can really shame me as much as I felt shamed before.
Are you willing to elaborate on what this was?
Yeah, so I grew up in a very strict Christian religion. We weren't allowed to celebrate any holidays, birthdays. We weren't allowed to dress we had to dress like with our covering. We had to cover most of our shoulders, and then it had to be past our knees. And it's just a lot of brainwashing, I felt like telling us, you know, you can only hang out with these people that are in this church, because if you don't, the other people out there, they are going to destroy your thinking, and then moving forward, you're going to die. Like, God's not going to look after you anymore. And so a lot of young people will leave because everybody goes through a rebellion phase. Mm-hmm. And they leave and they go to the extreme. They use drugs or get into prostitution or something where they can't control themselves, and they automatically think it's exactly what they told us. God is punishing us, and they go back. But for me, my mom was shunned for 10 years of my life. And
because of your actions?
Because of her actions.
Her actions.
She had premarital sex, and so she was shunned. And because of that, we weren't allowed to have friends in the church, and we weren't allowed to have friends outside of the church. So it was just me and my brother for most of my life. And it also made me realize I want to be around these people that are outside of the church more, you know. So I started developing these relationships in school. And once I became 17, I got baptized because I felt the pressure to get baptized, but I still had all of these relationships that I had with my friends outside. And at the end of the day, I just realized that this religion wasn't for me, and it wasn't something that I felt like I could be myself. And I felt like I was hiding a lot of things, and I had to walk away from it. And it really made me walk away from it when I was raped. And I had to sit down with old men and confess my sins. And
your sin of being raped.
Yeah. And my mom telling me, you know, this happened in the Bible, and this is why you shouldn't be alone with men, instead of just comforting me. And so that really turned me off completely as well.
Are you willing to name this religion?
Yeah, so I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness.
Okay. I think I remember you saying that now in one of your episodes. Yeah, that's I think for people that have never been a part of it, don't quite know it or understand it,
Yeah.
but to hear your story and how, I guess, just trying to live within two different worlds that exist simultaneously and figure this out as a kid, when there's already so many things as a kid that are difficult to understand and figure out. It just sounds like an extremely difficult challenge for someone like you.
Yeah, but I feel like that's also made me the person that I am today, because I don't want to navigate between two worlds anymore, which is why I'm so unapologetically me and am just honest with what's going on with myself and what's going on with my life. I don't want to have one part of my life going smoothly and another part of my life being complete trash. I want it to be cohesive, and if one part of my life is struggling, then another part of my life has to help pick up the pieces, for me at least. And so I was living in between these two worlds, and it was so much for me and so much on my mental health that I now know I can't do that. I have to be honest, and what I say I mean, and set boundaries, and yeah.
So how would you, if you can like rate yourself at this point in your life, and you can tell me how old you are if you want to, like how does your mental health, your mental state of mind compare now to what it used to? Is there some progress, great progress, kind of the same, worse? I just have no idea where you're at.
Yeah, so I would say I've made tremendous progress compared to where I was before. Before, I was a broken little girl who was completely codependent on her relationship with her mother and did not believe in herself at all. Like, I literally thought there was no way I was going to be able to get a full-time job. And I just had to be on welfare my whole life, which doesn't make sense when you say it out loud now. But I just truly believed no one was going to hire me full-time.
And why did you believe that?
Just because of the things that were being said in the house that I was living in. And the way that I was always treated was like, you're not as smart as you think you are. And so I didn't understand that the potential lied within me until I started leaving and separating myself from these environments. And now I can sit and take time to process things and think about my emotions and feel my emotions without feeling like everything else is going to cave in on me, or am I going to make the wrong decision and die tomorrow, you know? And so I'm making logical decisions now. And for me, I always say this, 2 + 2 is 4. It's not 5, it's not 3, it's 4. And that's how I make choices in life. It just has to make sense to me. If it doesn't make sense, I'm not going to do it.
And I get that. I'm a very logical, rational person, and I forget that sometimes other people don't always take that same approach. I think mine's the better approach, but that's because I'm logical. So I think other people are much more emotional or are persuaded by different things. And it's sometimes difficult to remember that someone else doing what they're doing, it's okay because it's their life, and I don't understand it, and people probably don't understand me sometimes, and they don't have to. But as we navigate our lives with people doing things so differently, it can be challenging, and just to kind of know where we stand and why it's okay to do some of the things that we do that other important people in our life might not approve of.
Right.
Okay, let's switch directions a little bit here. Hueman Journey is the name of your podcast, and I'm guessing you know the common way of spelling human, but you're spelling it differently, Hueman. Why?
Yeah, well, for those of you that are listening, I'm an African-American woman, and I always struggled with identity growing up because I didn't have my biological father in my home, and then media, of course. In the early 90s, early 2000s, depictions of black people on screen were not pleasant for the most part. And I grew up in white suburbia, so majority of the kids in my school were black. I think I was 3 one of three in my entire elementary school. So
The majority were
white.
Were
I'm sorry, they weren't black. They were white. Majority were white.
So 3 out of hundreds?
Yeah. So there was a girl that was older than me. She was black, and we're still friends to this day. And then there was a girl in my grade, and she was black. Other than that, I don't remember any other black students in the school.
If you can describe then what that is like, because you're getting representations that you've already mentioned from TV and media, and you're growing up around all white kids who I guess I don't understand what that'd be like at all. So please explain if you can in the best way possible.
Yeah, so I went to Jamaica recently, and it was cool to be in a country where everybody looked like me. I've never been to a country like that before. And so I explain it like this. Imagine going into a room full of black people and you're the only white guy there. You're gonna notice you're the only white guy there, but you may not feel any different about it because you don't care if they're black or Latino or white. But you know you're the only white guy in the room full of black people.
And I've done this on a few occasions with different groups of people.
Yeah.
That I was the minority completely.
Yes. And
it's
so
a really good experience to have.
Yes. And so it is uncomfortable sometimes being surrounded by people that don't look like you. And I think a lot of I don't even want to consider us minorities anymore, but a lot of the people of color often are seemed disposable to a lot of the world. So our mental health isn't addressed. Our health in general isn't addressed. And things that may seem okay for white people to do, it's not okay for people of color to do. And it's also been proven that black people, people of color, people from different countries are more expressive, and especially in passive Minnesota. It's a definite cultural difference, and you can feel it. And I have always felt more connected to people from like Chicago or New York because they're so blunt. And so I felt like I needed to acknowledge the fact that humans are a range of different shades, and we all struggle with mental health. And I do specifically focus on the black community because I am a black woman, but I also want the Asian community and the Latino community and the Native American community and white people, the white communities, to understand that we all are struggling with mental health. You know, everyone is going through something, and we all have journeys, and we all have things that we have to get through. And here are a list of things that you may be dealing with. Have you thought about how you could have a mental health disorder? Or have you thought about going to therapy? Have you thought about medication? Have you thought about aromatherapy? I'm just trying to get people to think about different things and have different cultures think about different things as well.
And we do, I think most or everybody has some sort of mental health challenges. The way you describe it, though, is a good reminder to the fact that whatever we're dealing with, it's come from maybe a way different upbringing and challenges that you can't understand. So when you look across the room and possibly pass judgment on someone for whatever they're doing or whatever they're like, if you think somehow like they're less than equal, you probably have no idea.
Right.
No idea what that person has done. And I am getting better at that. Certainly I'm not perfect at that in any way, just to not pass judgment, because I think it's a very human thing to judge as a way of like survival perhaps. We need to step back and think, okay, this person lived a different life. Let me just have understanding and compassion rather than some negative judgments that I think much more naturally have come to us or maybe been taught to us from long ago.
Yeah, for sure. I was raised to be scared of black people. My mom was terrified of black people. So it's just a weird dynamic to grow up around all white people wanting your hair to be straight. And then I go to middle school and I see black people and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're like me and they're funny and I want to be around them. And so it was a struggle, like identity again. I'm in a religion that's confusing me. I'm also a black little girl in America, and I have a mental health disorder that I was diagnosed with. What can I tell people about myself? I don't know. What am I supposed to say to people about myself? A lot of secrets were kept in the family, and it just felt like I was always constantly treading in water and navigating who I was supposed to be instead of just trying to figure it out for myself, And it's hard when you have mental health issues. And like I said, I was diagnosed at 10, but I think that growing up as a Jehovah's Witness didn't help with who I was as a person, trying to figure that out, going through hormone changes, because I did get my period that year for the first time. And then dealing with my mom's mental health. And all of that in combination gave me a lot of anxiety. And so then it felt like almost a guinea pig trying different medications a lot. So it was just a combination of a lot of things. And yeah, I think we need to focus on the fact that people are different. People grow up differently. And I think in this political climate, it is hard to have compassion for people, especially when you go online and you can just see how someone's acting and you're over it. But I know it's hard, but I always am like, let's think about how this person grew up. Let's think about where they grew up. Were they acknowledged as a human being growing up? Why is this person like this? People don't just come out of the womb an evil spirit, So yeah, I try to think about, I try to have empathy and compassion, which also has led me astray sometimes. But
You bring up your mother and your family a little bit. At this point in your life, are you close with your family, some members of your family, or how has that changed as you become more open about some of the things that you have struggled with in the past?
Yeah, so I am not close to my family at all, which has made me feel lonely a lot. I don't talk to my mom and my stepdad, but I call him my dad. My biological dad is in prison. But I don't talk to my mom and my stepdad because they're still in the religion, and technically they're not supposed to be speaking to me.
So do you use that as a reason to not talk to them, just to kind of like help them out, or they don't try to talk to you as much because they're not supposed to?
Both. So I was the person that at one point was cutting people off too, because they decided they didn't want to be in it anymore. And so I can understand where they're coming from, but at the same time I'm your child, and so I can't understand not being able to have a real relationship. I mean, I've been with my boyfriend for 2 years now, and he's never been invited to their home, and I live with him. You would think you would want to meet the person that your daughter's living with. So yeah, I don't talk to my family to help them, but also I don't want the rejection, I think, of them saying to me, hey, we can't associate with you on this bare minimum level that you're giving us. We can't even do that anymore. But I had to completely cut them off recently just because of the mental health things that were going on with my mom, and I just can't constantly feel like I'm responsible for her emotions anymore. And so I had to separate myself, and we had a fallout, and I had to separate myself. And with my sister and my brother, just because of the way we grew up, we have a lot of secrets, like I said, in our family, and so we don't really talk about things. And so it's hard to feel connected to someone that you grew up with, but you don't really talk about things.
And you
with.
know there's things that
Yeah.
you could or should talk about and you're not. So
Yeah.
you feel, even though you physically might be in the same place, you feel further away
Yeah.
probably than
Yeah.
you should.
Yeah. And my sister just moved out of state. And my brother, he lives over in North Minneapolis, and he has 2 kids. And so it's hard not being able to be around my nieces and stuff. But I also know for myself, I have to make the best decisions, things that make sense, right? Logic. And for me, it doesn't make sense to continue to break my heart over and over and try to repair it weekly. So I just have to do what I have to do for myself and process the relationship the way it is.
You mentioned you feel lonely. Have you found anyone that has gone through, is going through something even remotely similar to what you have, to at least not feel alone in that way?
Yeah, so I still have some friends that I grew up with that left as well. And so it's nice to be able to talk to them. But also, I am now more recently meeting people that have had similar situations with their moms. And it's nice to be able to relate. But I still feel like I grew up isolating myself so much because of the religion and because of circumstances. I wasn't allowed to have friends over and stuff like that. So I feel like I still isolate myself a lot. Even when people say that they're there for me, I don't fully believe it sometimes because I don't want to burden someone. Instead of thinking of it as I'm there for them, they want to be there for me. I still think of it as me burdening them sometimes.
But you're probably not a burden at all.
No, not at all.
But it's something that you deal with.
Yeah.
Even though you know you're not, you think you are, and it's just
Yeah, it's like a
mental
constant battle. Yeah. It's a constant battle.
One of the things that I do on my podcast is have a personal growth segment, and it's really whatever direction you want to take it. And I think it tends to be like most of the conversation leading up to it has a lot to do with personal growth, but I wonder for you, Phalin, what you really see as things that you're extremely focused on when it comes to personal growth that maybe by sharing it here could specifically help other people that haven't considered this yet.
Yeah. So personal growth, mental health wise, I would say, thank you. I want to be able to process things faster. My brain still is kind of, it's still learning. It's still learning how to process, so it's kind of slow. So I want to be able to process things faster. I want to be able to set boundaries, clearer boundaries. I tend to give and give and give and give and give and not receive sometimes. And so I want to set more restrictive boundaries. Like if you're not going to show me what I need, then I can't continue to keep pouring myself into. But career-wise, I'm very focused and determined, and I don't really talk about what I'm doing that much, but there are a lot of late nights, and I'm just really determined to get where I want to get. I feel like the little version of me, the little Phalin, deserves this lifestyle that I've never had before. So if I'm manifesting and putting things into the world, I'd say I want to continue to be able to work for myself and be able to express my creative thinking and my creative self, and continue to be around people that push me and motivate me to be the best me. And I think that is including like being around people like you who podcast, push me to continue to podcast, and push me to, like, I met a co-working space downtown called The Coven. It's an all women and non-binary co-working space. And yeah, it's just like everybody there pushes me and motivates me to continue making my business the best that I can, and graphics, and making the best graphic design that I can. And yeah, I hope that answered the question for personal.
It does, and describe the Coven a little bit more. I guess I've heard of it probably through you, and that there's things like this that exist. I have never taken part in something like that. So describe, if you went there right now, describe what you would see and who would be there, then how you might be interacting with these people.
Yeah, I love the Coven, so I'm so open to talk about this. So I received a community-funded membership in June, and it's a co-working space, so they have lounge couches and chairs. They have conference rooms where you can host your business meetings. So I did a lot of interviews in the conference rooms. They have telephone rooms, mother and prayer rooms. And then they have a kitchen where you can keep your food, and they provide snacks as well. they are always hosting events. And yeah, it's 2 levels. So the 3rd level, they have a beauty bar area, a shower so you can get dressed, and a little free library area where they have a ton of motivational business books, and then desks where you can plug your laptop into the monitor, and then you go upstairs and then there's the kitchen and more of a loungy area, coffee. And it's a lot of people that work from home, a lot of people that have started their own businesses, and a lot of people that are CEOs and co-founders, and it just motivates you being there, being around people that have the same like-mindedness and want to achieve things just like you. And you build these connections with these people, and yeah, it's I think the best part about being there is the connections that I've built.
So have you like built actual friendships through that, or a little more casual, just seeing them there? Are you spending time with any of these people elsewhere and talking with them when you're not there?
Yeah, so just recently I was able to attend a lunch with our newer wellness brand in Minneapolis, and was able to connect with one of the co-founders, and now we do a monthly lunch. And my friend Emily Rose, that was just on my last Nourishment segment episode. I was gonna say episode and segment together. My last episode, we've become really good friends. I've attended some of her yoga classes, and we hang out. But a lot of the times I like hanging out with them at the Coven Space because it's just a good place to meet, and you can work together, and I like to work.
What are some of the skills that you've built that either by meeting some people there and learning some stuff, or whatever else that you're most proud of that you think have helped you quite a bit?
Yeah, so I didn't go to college. I finished my high school diploma and then tried college, community college, and didn't really like it. And I've always known about myself that I am a hands-on learner, so a technical college would probably be best for me. I went to pharmacy school and learned because it was more of a technical college. But after that, I just started teaching myself stuff from the internet. So I got into digital marketing based off of learning everything I needed to learn on the internet, and then I reached out to the technical school I went to and asked if I could speak to someone, and that was a digital marketer for them. And then just asked her, will you be my mentor? And from there, things just kept growing, and I kept learning more, and she'd send me articles to brush up on things. And then I started podcasting and joining podcasting groups. But more recently, I've been more into graphic design and podcast editing. And I've been DJing.
How'd you get into that?
Yeah, that's a weird one, actually. I don't even know how I got into it. I saw an a job ad for DJs, and I reached out to them. And I don't know how I got it. I've never DJ'd before, but they just trained me for everything, and I was doing weddings and proms. And then I left that company and went with a different company, a smaller one. And so that's who I'm DJing with, Mark Haugen right now, Mark Haugen DJs. And so we do weddings, and I just did a Oktoberfest at Free House downtown. That was fun. But I've always been into music. I've played violin since I was in 4th grade. So music has always been a huge part of my life. A huge part of my life. It has gotten me through a lot of things. And yeah, so I have a wide range of different type of genres I like to listen to, and I think that helped me get the job a little bit.
Do you find yourself desiring to learn more now than before? I think I do, but I'm wondering if that's just a normal thing as we get older, that we just realize how much we love to learn, or maybe when you're going through school, the way that you're forced to learn things, it's not as fun, but when you are able to learn whatever you want, and you realize that you can learn anything in 2019, that it's just, I feel like I just don't have enough time to learn everything I want to learn.
Yeah, for sure. There are so many things that I want to learn and I want to go to school for, but I know I'm I'm not focused enough to sit and take the prerequisites before I get to the fun stuff. But yeah, I'm constantly online brushing up on things and reading articles and how can I do something different. And I'm in digital marketing, so how can I create ads that can be used in virtual reality because I want to be 10 steps ahead, you know? And so I'm constantly it's probably not a good thing. My family keeps telling me I need to slow down. My daughter and my boyfriend, but my eyes get so tired from reading all the time. I taught myself Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Creative Cloud, and I taught myself how to edit podcasts, and I taught myself like everything I'm doing right now. I've been learning just based off of reading, and so there's always so many different things I want to learn and add on to, and I would love to go to school for psychology, but I also want to enjoy my life, and I know life is short.
I can get what you're talking about. Like, I feel like I'm always trying to outdo myself. Like, there's more I need to accomplish.
Yeah.
And the slowing down, I don't know.
I know.
I feel like I slow down when I take a vacation, and I kind of enjoy life differently. But then when I'm in my normal routine, if I'm not accomplishing more and more and more, I kind of feel bad about it. So that's probably one of the mental health struggles that seems less apparent to me. Even I'd imagine a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard for me to slow down, especially because, like I said, I have goals and dreams that I've been dreaming of since I was 7 years old. And so now that I'm at an age where I don't have any restrictions and my mental health is in order and I feel good about my life and I'm able to quit my job and pursue the things that I want to pursue, I'm just like, I can't slow down now.
No, I don't know. I really don't know when I would ever slow down. I'd probably have to move to some really distant, different place to have a different lifestyle. But while I'm here, as you can relate to the podcast, like, okay, if we're going to do a podcast, it's got to improve at least gradually. So the different things I'm trying to do, there's not enough. I haven't found enough time. There is enough time. I need to find it. I haven't found enough time to do all these things that I'm trying to learn and do better, and that's a part of creating. So had you really created independently before with anything?
I've always been in arts. My mom was a painter, and my dad can pick up any instrument and learn it in like 10 minutes. So I've always loved music, and I've always been in arts. I've realized that I release my anxiety through my hands, and so I love cooking, I love baking, I love painting, crocheting, knitting, and drawing, and creating just anything. I love just creating things with my hands. And so I wasn't ever in the digital part of it, but I knew at some point that I wanted to do something digitally. I just didn't know it was going to be marketing or graphic design. And I was just saying, I went to school initially when I went to the community college for graphic design, and I was like, these classes are so boring. I was just taking English and math, and I was like, these are so boring. I don't want to do this. And then I switched to accounting.
That sounds more boring than those, but maybe not for you.
I switched to accounting, and I don't know why, and then I dropped out after that. But now I'm here doing graphic design, So it's full circle. But I just end up needing something. So I needed a new logo for my podcast, and I couldn't afford it to pay someone to do it. So I had to learn how to do it on my own,
Which is a valuable skill, because now you could sell that service to someone else.
Yeah, so now I'm doing projects for people and getting paid for it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's been a rewarding journey in general, being able to teach myself something and knowing I taught myself this and then getting paid for it. It's been pretty cool.
So that, I think, captures a lot of your growth in the last few years. Let's move to the being wrong segment. Yeah. And I don't know how familiar you are with my podcast and why I do this, but I just feel like I've the more I learn, the more I realize I've been wrong about so many things. More than anything, I think my mind has changed about countless different aspects of life. So I like to have my guests explain something that if they could go back to a previous version of themselves, you could tell the previous version of yourself that you're wrong.
Yeah.
And that's why I call this the Being Wrong segment. So when I present that, what comes to mind that you're willing to share?
Yeah, so what comes to mind is something that I was just recently talking about, and I feel guilty about, but I also understand that it's not me anymore. So Trudeau just got in trouble. Did you see what happened with him in the blackface and the brown face?
Prime Minister of Canada is that his title?
Mm-hmm. And I don't know what else he's done recently, but I think about how that was 30 years ago and how I'm a different person from even 5 years ago. And so I was thinking about what people could pull on my Instagram or my Twitter account or my Facebook and think about me. And things that came up for me were things that I did in elementary school, which obviously we didn't have Twitter then. But in elementary school, I wasn't very nice to Middle Eastern people. I know it was after 9/11 and everything, but still I feel guilty about that, especially because my boyfriend's from Iran. And he tells me about all of his experiences. And then another thing that I wish I could change, and I'm sure I said something on Facebook about it many years ago, is my thoughts on the LGBTQ community, which also it's kind of like a self-internal hate because I've always had attraction. So yeah, maybe it was some type of self-hate where I knew I had these attraction to women, but also it came from the religion as well, where I felt like it was in the Bible that you should not have sexual relations with the same sex. And I wasn't going around stomping on people or hurting anyone physically, but I know my thoughts were hurtful, and I know the fact that I wasn't helping to, my thoughts were so exclusive, and I don't like that. I don't like thinking like that. I don't like knowing that Black people in general have been so excluded, and I hate comparing like the black race to the gay struggle, but at the same time we're all being excluded from things, and so I don't like the exclusion, and I don't like the thoughts that I had about it. So if I could go back and tell my old self, you were wrong, I'd tell her, stop it, like cut it out, you're completely wrong. And even when I knew they were born, like people were born with these desires like I was, I still didn't, it was still being, to me it still was like a sin, and I don't like that feels icky to me. So if I could go back, I would tell my old self, you're wrong about that.
And I think that's part of learning that we're going to have a starting point, and we're going to be given information that in many cases, and I think in almost all cases, so much of it is just not correct. And the people giving this information, they might have great intentions. They might really think that this is the best information to pass along. But unfortunately, not everyone that teaches us knows enough. They know as much as they're able to know in that moment, but then they teach. People teach without knowing everything, and that just puts us all in positions where we have bad information, and bad information spreads still today in all kinds of ways. Wrong information, stuff that at least should be questioned further, but we carry this with us until we finally are put in a position, and we enter this position with some sort of an open mind where we recognize that maybe this old belief I had, this knowledge I thought I had, can begin to fall away because this new piece of information, this new experience has changed me. And I appreciate you sharing those because maybe there's someone taking in this conversation that thinks more similar to the old version of you. And anytime that happens with one of these conversations, I don't know how it's hitting someone, but the point of it is that we're all allowed to change our minds. And no one has to change their mind. I'm not saying change your mind about whatever it is. Just be willing to consider that other people already changed their mind about something that you haven't changed your mind about
Yes.
yet, quite possibly.
Yes.
And maybe they have taken a better approach, maybe they haven't. But
Yeah.
people have different experiences, and I just like to take in as many experiences as I can and hear as many perspectives as I can, knowing that there's things that I think are the best way for me that just aren't right now. And I haven't found them all yet.
Yeah.
I'm excited to learn all the things that I'm doing right now that are kind of wrong and getting rid of them. And I think I made a lot of
Exactly.
progress, but I'm not there yet.
Exactly. I don't see anything wrong with being called out anymore. And I was so prideful before, where if someone called me out, I took it personal. And now I see it more as a chance to change my mind and grow. I don't have to agree with everything someone tells me, but I don't have to be so closed-minded either. And going back to what you just said, yeah, I think people should know it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to think differently. But if you have done damage towards something, you have to also repair it in some way. So you have to be an advocate in some way. And that takes time to learn, and that also takes energy, and you have to be willing to put in that energy, and you have to be willing to say, hey, I was wrong, and put your pride to the side. And yeah, so I agree with you, and I like that question. I like that segment.
Just getting good at being okay with being wrong is something that's one of the skills I've acquired that I think is one of my best skills. Like, I'm cool with it. Tell me I'm wrong, and I might agree with you.
Yeah.
And then we can move forward. And I find I didn't used to be like that,
Yeah.
and I don't know that many people are going to be good at that. And I really believe it's maybe the most powerful skill that I've acquired in my life.
Oh yeah, have you read the 4 Agreements?
I have not.
So one of the 4 agreements is not taking things personal, which has literally changed my life. I can't take things... If someone's telling me you're wrong about this and I take it personal, that's because I'm feeling some type of personal attachment to whatever they're saying I'm wrong about. But if I'm wrong, why am I taking it personal? You know what I'm trying to say.
I think it's the idea is wrong.
Yes.
And you've just misattached.
Yes.
You've attached yourself to something that...
If someone says to me this hamburger is made of beef, and I say no, it's pork, and they say actually it's beef, why am I going to get upset? It's not something personal, it's just facts. And so I think that's the other thing that we have to take into account is you just can't take things personal at all. You just have to take it as this is information being fed to me, and what am I going to do with this information? And that changed my life completely. I'm very much, please just be blunt with me. Do not sugarcoat anything with me, please. Because I just can't handle the sugarcoating anymore, and I guess that's why I connect with people that are very blunt, because I just don't. I need you to tell me when I'm wrong so that I don't look stupid.
And well, you don't look stupid anymore.
Exactly.
And I'm no psychologist, but I'd imagine it's something to do with our egos, and if we start to dismantle all the things that we think make us who we are, and we do that too quickly, I think that can be, and people go through this in different ways, that can be pretty painful and difficult to do. So I don't know that you need to do it all at once. Just be willing to chip away at it and see what you become when you've chipped away some of the things that you've attached yourself to that just might not be serving you as well as you'd like them to.
Yeah, I like that.
So Phalin, I think we're close to wrapping this up, and I'll put all the information for people to find you and your podcast into the show notes, but tell what you have going on right now so people can hear you talk about it and find it that way. Yeah,
so as we discussed earlier, I have a podcast called Hueman Journey. It's Hueman. And it's a podcast to destigmatize mental health, but also I added a segment on Wednesdays. It's a whole episode where I interviewed people and I asked the same 20 questions and got 37 or 27 different responses and to each question. And I'm excited to share that with everyone. But I've just been, I also DJ, so if you're looking for a DJ. But yeah, I've just been really trying to figure out what direction I want to take my life in and what legacy I want to leave behind and what imprint I want to leave behind on this earth. And that's just been basically me following my gut and my heart, and it's led me here. And I've been doing some positive things. So please check out Hueman Journey podcast. And yeah, thanks for having me on here.
Is there a particular social media account that you're most active on that?
Yeah, so you can follow me on my Instagram handle at Phalin Oliver. It's Phalin. Otherwise, you can follow the podcast as well at Hueman Journey Pod. And I usually am very active on Instagram. I kind of ignore Facebook and Snapchat and all that. I'm just more of an Instagram person.
Cool, and I think that's where most people are
Yeah.
finding themselves. And it'd probably be best if we all just went to one place, and because
Yeah,
it's so difficult when you're trying to like post in all these different things because you think you need to. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing that I'm going through that I kind of wish I didn't have to do, and I don't have to do. But if you're trying to build something, you can't just be quiet about it. So it's a challenge. Thank you for joining me today and sharing some of the things from your life that have been pretty impactful that I'd imagine aren't always that easy to talk about.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoy being able to tell people what I've been through, and hopefully it helps one person.
One would be great, and
Yeah.
who knows how many more it might actually help. Thank you, Phalin.